Dust danced in the hot air of Dustwater Valley when the lone rider appeared on the horizon, his silhouette cut against the setting sun like a shadow from the past. The jingle of spurs echoed through the empty streets, breaking a silence that seemed to carry secrets too heavy to be spoken aloud. Jake Harland had left 7 years ago, swearing never to return. Now the most feared bounty hunter in the territory crossed the main street with eyes that had seen too much, carrying scars that told stories of dangerous men and difficult decisions. But nothing, absolutely nothing in his hunts through the wild deserts had prepared him for what he would find at home. The Silver Moon Saloon still dominated the main corner, but something was terribly wrong. The windows, once always lit with golden light and laughter, now looked like tired eyes staring at the street. The piano music, which used to float through the air like jasmine perfume, had been replaced by an unsettling silence. Jake Harland, is that really you?" The voice of old Bill, the blacksmith, cut through his thoughts. The man approached limping, his eyes revealing a mixture of surprise and something else. Pity. "Bill?" Jake nodded, dismounting. His hands, accustomed to the weight of revolvers, trembled slightly. "How's my mother?" The silence that followed was more revealing than 1,000 words. Bill looked away, contemplating the dust at his feet as if he could find courage in it. "Margaret, she's strong, you know that. But lately—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Cornelius Ashford has been tightening the noose. Debts, threats. The saloon isn't what it used to be." Jake felt his chest tighten. Margaret Harland never owed anyone anything. It was her code of honor, her trademark. "Where is she?" "At the saloon, as always." "She never leaves there, Jake. It's like—" Bill hesitated again. "It's like she's guarding a fort alone." As Jake tied his horse and walked toward the saloon doors, a question hammered in his mind. What could have happened to break the spirit of the strongest woman he had ever known? Chapter 2. The Revelation. The hinges of the Silver Moon Saloon doors groaned when Jake pushed the worn wood. The interior, once vibrant as a beating heart of the city, now whispered stories of better days. Empty tables accumulated dust, and the large mirror behind the bar displayed a crack that cut his reflection like a scar. Margaret Harland had her back turned, polishing glasses that already gleamed. Her shoulders, always erect as unbreakable mountains, now curved under an invisible weight. When she turned, Jake had to control his expression. The blue eyes that once sparkled like tempered steel were dull, surrounded by deep wrinkles. The disease had stolen the roses from her cheeks, leaving a pallor that the yellowed lamplight couldn't disguise. "Jake." Her voice at least maintained traces of its old strength. "You shouldn't have come back." "Mother." He approached, but she raised her hand, stopping him. "I didn't come here for pity, son. I know news flies faster than eagles in this desert." Margaret poured 2 glasses of whiskey with hands that trembled slightly. "Sit down. If you came all this way, you deserve to know the truth." Jake obeyed, the weight of the revolver on his hip seeming insignificant compared to the weight of that conversation. Margaret coughed, a dry sound that echoed through the empty hall, before beginning. 2 winters ago, black fever passed through Dustwater Valley. It took many good men, left widows and orphans. She paused, drinking the whiskey as if it were bitter medicine. "I took them in, Jake. All of them. I gave them work, shelter, dignity. But the fever found me too." "You're sick?" "Yes. Dying." "Not yet." A flash of old humor shone in her eyes. "But medicine costs dearly, and keeping 15 women and their children fed costs even more. I borrowed from Cornelius Ashford. First it was $100, then $200. "How much?" Jake interrupted, his voice carrying a dangerous calm that preceded storms. $3,000. Margaret straightened her back, defiant even in vulnerability. "With the interest that snake charges, it must be at $5,000 by now." Jake stood abruptly, the chair scraping the floorboards. $5,000 was a fortune, more than most men saw in a lifetime. "Why didn't you send for me? Why didn't you—" "Because you had your own life." Margaret's voice thundered, and for a moment, She was again the woman who tamed drunks and gunmen with a look. I didn't raise my son to be my crutch. I raised a man to make a difference in this world. And what difference did I make, Mother? Jake laughed bitterly. Hunting men for money while you... He stopped, noticing the unshed tears in her eyes. You did what you had to. I did what I had to. Margaret went back to polishing the glasses, her hands finding comfort in the repetitive movement. Ashford comes tomorrow. He wants a final answer about his proposal. What proposal? The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Finally, Margaret whispered, He wants to turn my saloon into a brothel. Says it's the only way to pay the debts. She raised her chin. I'd rather burn this place than let that happen. Jake walked to his mother, gently placing his hands on her frail shoulders. You gave me everything, Mother. Courage, honor, a name to be proud of. You said you have nothing to give me? He smiled, the first true smile in years. You gave me reasons to fight. And tomorrow, Cornelius Ashford is going to find out he messed with the wrong family. Margaret looked at her son, and in that moment, mother and son were two warriors preparing for the battle of their lives. Outside, the wind howled between the buildings, as if the desert itself sensed the approaching storm. Chapter 3. The Confrontation. The clock on the wall marked exactly noon when Cornelius Ashford walked through the doors of the Silver Moon Saloon. Dressed in an impeccable black suit that clashed with the dust and sweat of Dustwater Valley, he was the very incarnation of greed disguised as respectability. Two thugs flanked him, men with empty eyes and hands near their holsters. Jake was leaning against the bar, apparently disinterested, cleaning his nails with a knife. Margaret remained behind the counter, erect as a queen on her threatened throne. The 15 women she employed had gathered in the hall, forming a silent wall of skirts and determination. Mrs. Harland. Ashford removed his expensive hat, an oily smile playing on his thin lips. I've come for your answer. I hope good sense has prevailed over foolish pride. Mr. Ashford, Margaret's voice didn't waver. My answer remains the same as yesterday, last week, and every day since you made your indecent proposal. The banker sighed theatrically, pulling up a chair and sitting without being invited. Let's be practical, my dear. You owe $5,300, considering today's interest. This establishment, in its current state, isn't worth half that. He gestured around, his fat, ringed fingers catching the light. But transformed into what I propose, it could yield triple in 6 months. I'd rather owe the devil, Margaret replied calmly, than turn a place of dignity into a den of degradation. Ashford laughed, a humorless sound that made Jake tighten his grip on the knife handle. Dignity? Look around you. Empty chairs, empty coffers, and you speak of dignity. These women, he pointed dismissively at the employees, could earn 10 times more in the business I propose. We prefer honest poverty, shouted Mary, one of the widows, her eyes flaming. A chorus of agreement echoed among the women. Fools, all of you. Ashford stood, adjusting his vest. Very well, Mrs. Harland. You have until tomorrow's sunset. Either accept my proposal, or I take everything. And when I say everything... He approached the counter, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper that everyone still heard. That includes this land. You'll all be on the street, without shelter, without work, without anything. Jake finally moved, spinning the knife skillfully before driving it into the bar wood, inches from Ashford's hand. Watch where you step, banker. Snake territory usually has snakes. Ashford recoiled, his eyes recognizing Jake for the first time. The prodigal son returns. Jake Harland, the famous bounty hunter. He smiled maliciously. How many men have you brought back dead tied to your horse? 12? 15? And now you come to defend Mama's honor. I brought 17, Jake corrected calmly, and all of them were less dangerous than a corrupt banker who hides behind papers and threats. The tension in the hall could be cut with a knife. Ashford's thugs moved their hands toward their weapons, but Jake didn't even blink. Margaret broke the silence. My answer is no, Mr. Ashford. Today, tomorrow, always. This saloon was built with honest sweat and will remain honest until its last day. Ashford took his hat, placing it with precise movements. Then let it be the last day. He walked to the door, stopping to give his final words. "Sunset tomorrow, Mrs. Harland. After that, not even God can help you." When the doors closed behind him, Jake looked at his mother. In her eyes, he saw not just determination, but something deeper. The certainty of someone who chose to fight even knowing the odds were minimal. "He'll come back with more men," Margaret said simply. "I know," Jake replied, pulling the knife from the wood. "But he doesn't know we also have something no money can buy." "What?" Jake looked at the gathered women, each with her own story of loss and survival, then turned back to his mother. "We have everything to lose. And there's no one more dangerous than someone with nothing left to lose. What is Jake planning? Who will be the unexpected allies? Comment your theory below. Chapter 4. Gathering Allies night fell over Dustwater Valley like a black velvet cloak, and Jake Harland walked through the shadows with the determination of a man on a mission. His first stop was Bill's Forge, where the hammer still sounded against hot metal, sparks dancing in the darkness. "I need you, Bill," Jake said without preamble. "My mother needs you." The old blacksmith paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. 3 years ago, I was hanging from a rope, accused of a theft I didn't commit. Your mother paid my bail, hired a lawyer." He plunged the glowing iron into water, the hiss filling the silence. "My hammer is yours, boy." The next stop was riskier. On the outskirts of town, in a cabin that looked more like a den, lived Thomas Dead Hand Mackenzie, a legendary gunslinger who had hung up his guns after a shootout that left his right hand permanently shaking. "Jake Harland," the hoarse voice came from the porch shadows. "I heard you're gathering men. I need your experience, Mackenzie, not your gun." The old gunslinger lit a cigar, the ember briefly illuminating his face marked by decades of sun and violence. "Your mother gave me work at the bar when no one else would trust a washed-up gunslinger. I taught her girls to defend themselves in case some drunk got bold." He stood up, and even at 60, he still commanded respect. "My hand may shake, but my mind is still sharp as a razor." The young sheriff, Daniel Hayes, was found in his office, studying maps and documents by lamplight. He looked up when Jake entered without knocking. "I know why you're here," Daniel said, closing the law book he was reading. "Ashford has half this town in his pocket, but not me. Why would you risk your badge for us?" Daniel smiled, a smile that carried more weight than his 25 years suggested. "Because when I arrived here, green as spring grass, your mother was the only one who treated me with respect. She said a man isn't measured by age, but by his actions." He opened a drawer, revealing a stack of documents. "I've been investigating Ashford for months. Forged contracts, illegal interest, even connections to stagecoach robberies. Proof? Circumstantial, mostly, but with the right pieces." Daniel left the sentence hanging. Back at the Silver Moon Saloon, a surprise awaited Jake. The 15 women were gathered, but not as victims waiting for salvation. Mary held a rifle she clearly knew how to use. Elizabeth, the seamstress, had transformed the hall into a small arsenal, with knives hidden in strategic places. Even little Sarah, barely out of adolescence, demonstrated impressive skill with a slingshot. "Did you think we were just helpless waitresses?" Mary arched an eyebrow. "Mr. Jake, we've survived the worst life can offer. We lost husbands, fathers, brothers. Your mother gave us more than work. She gave us purpose. We'll fight for her." Margaret watched from the stairs, leaning on the railing. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but also with something else, hope. "Mother," Jake climbed to her. "Ashford made a mistake." "Which one?" "He thought you were alone, that we were just a bunch of desperate people." Jake looked at the gathered group. The blacksmith with his powerful arms, the gunslinger with his cunning, the sheriff with his thirst for justice, the women with their fierce courage. "But he doesn't understand that your greatest strength was never money. It was the love you planted in this town." Mackenzie spat on the floor and declared, "That son of a bitch is going to find out he messed with the wrong family. And in this town, Margaret Harland has more family than he can count." Outside, the wind howled like an omen. The battle for Dustwater Valley was about to begin, and for the first time in years, the dice weren't loaded in favor of the house. Chapter 5. The planned dawn found the group gathered at the Silver Moon Saloon, maps and documents spread over 3 joined tables. The smoke from Mackenzie's cigars created ghostly spirals in the weak lamplight, while Jake drew strategies with charcoal on a piece of leather. Ashford keeps his most compromising documents in the bank vault, Daniel explained, pointing to a crude drawing of the building. But he also keeps personal records at his mansion on the North Hill. 2 targets, little time, Mackenzie analyzed, his tactical mind still sharp. Splitting forces is risky. Not if we split correctly, Jake intervened. I discovered something interesting tracking Ashford's steps. Every Thursday he visits a certain lady in Copper Ridge, 3 hours journey from here. He leaves at dawn, returns at nightfall. Today is Wednesday, Mary observed, a sly smile playing on her lips. What are you proposing? Jake stood up, the natural authority of years leading hunts emanating from him. A 3-front attack. Tomorrow morning, when Ashford leaves, Daniel and I will raid his mansion. We'll look not just for documents, but anything that proves his connections to the stagecoach robberies. Breaking and entering is a crime, Daniel pondered, but his eyes shone with determination. But if we find evidence of greater crimes... Exactly. Meanwhile, Jake continued, Bill and 3 of the ladies will create a distraction at the bank. Nothing illegal. Just a very loud argument about a supposed inheritance. Enough time for me to enter through the back, Mackenzie completed, immediately understanding. I know that vault. Harrisburg model from 1868. With the right tools in 20 minutes. 15, Bill interrupted, producing a set of specialized lockpicks. I made these beauties especially for Harrisburg locks. Consider it a late retirement gift, dead hand. Margaret, who had come down the stairs supported by Elizabeth, cleared her throat. What about Ashford's thugs? He has at least 12 men. That's where we come in. Mary spoke up, the other women agreeing. We found out that 5 of them frequent Madame Rosalie's brothel every Thursday afternoon, a little laudanum in their whiskey. No, Margaret interrupted firmly. We won't stoop to his level. Not to hurt them, Mrs. Margaret, Sarah, the youngest, explained timidly. Just to make them sleep until Friday. My grandmother was a healer. I know the exact doses. Jake observed the group, impressed. That still leaves 7 men. 6, a new voice echoed from the door. Everyone turned to see Father Francisco, the old Mexican priest from the small chapel. Pedro Carvalho, one of the thugs, came to confess yesterday. He's tired of this life. I offered him redemption and honest work at the Morrison Ranch. Father, Margaret whispered, moved. Daughter, I fought in the war against tyranny in Mexico. I recognize oppression when I see it. He crossed the hall, his black robes rustling. God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes his justice needs human hands. Mackenzie studied the map again. 6 men, still too many. Not if we know where they'll be. Jake smiled, a predatory smile that made several present remember his reputation. Daniel, you said you've been investigating Ashford. Do you know the thugs' names? Every one of them. Then you'll know that Carl Morrison owes 3 months of alimony. An anonymous tip to the federal marshal in Copper Ridge. Jake let the suggestion hang. That leaves 5, Bill calculated. 5 against all of us? Elizabeth, normally quiet, slammed her fist on the table. I like those odds. The plan took shape like an intricate web. Each person had a role, each movement calculated. But it was Margaret who made the crucial observation. What if Ashford finds out? If he comes back early? Jake and Mackenzie exchanged glances. Then, the old gunslinger said gravely, We'll have to be ready for the worst. But one thing I guarantee, he won't take this saloon without a fight that Dustwater Valley will never forget. Outside, the first rays of sun painted the horizon blood red. In a few hours the plan would be put into action. The die was cast. Chapter 6. The Battle. The sun set like an open wound in the sky when everything began to go wrong. Jake and Daniel had gotten the incriminating documents at Ashford's mansion, forged contracts, bribery records, even letters connecting him to the robberies. Mackenzie had cracked the bank vault, revealing ledgers with double bookkeeping. But someone had betrayed the group. "They've surrounded the saloon." Sarah burst through the back door, her face pale with terror. "Ashford's back. He has at least 20 men with him." Jake cursed. Ashford hadn't gone to Copper Ridge. It was a trap. Outside, the banker's voice echoed like thunder. "Mrs. Harland, I know your son and your friends broke into my property. Come out now, surrender what you stole, and I'll only take the saloon. Resist, and everyone will be charged with theft and hanged." Margaret, despite the disease consuming her, walked to the window. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the authority of years taming violent men. "Cornelius Ashford, you speak of theft? You who have stolen from this town for years? We won't come out." "Then you'll die in there," Ashford snarled. "Boys, prepare the torches." That's when Mackenzie demonstrated why he was a legend. "Defensive positions, now." His command voice awakened years of instinct. "Bill, Elizabeth, overturn table at the north window. Mary, Sarah, protect the back entrance. Daniel, with me at the front." Jake bounded up the stairs in 3 leaps, positioning himself with his rifle at the upper floor window. Below, Ashford's thugs advanced, but something extraordinary happened. From the surrounding houses, people began to emerge. Wilson, the baker with his hunting shotgun. Old Samuel, Civil War veteran, limping but armed. Teacher Catherine with her 2 adult daughters, all carrying rifles. "What the hell?" Ashford backed away, surprised. "You forgot one thing, Ashford," Margaret shouted from the window, now supported by Jake. "This isn't just my saloon. It's the heart of this town, and you threatened the heart of Dustwater Valley." The first shot came from one of the thugs, nervous. It shattered the saloon window, and then hell broke loose. Jake took down 2 men with precise shots, aiming at shoulders and legs. He wanted justice, not massacre. Mackenzie, even with his shaking hand, directed the defense like a conductor leading a deadly symphony. "West window, 3 men. Mary now." The widow didn't hesitate, her rifle thundering. Years of hunting to feed her children had made her a formidable markswoman, but the numbers still favored Ashford. 2 thugs managed to reach the back door with lit torches. That's when the unexpected happened. Margaret appeared at the door, not with a weapon, but with her late husband's old violin. "Mother, what are you doing?" Jake shouted. Margaret began to play. The melody, "Amazing Grace," cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. It was absurd, surreal, a sick woman playing violin in the middle of a shootout. But it worked. The men with torches hesitated, hypnotized by the incongruity of the moment. It was enough time. Father Francisco appeared behind them with a wooden staff, knocking both out with precise blows. "Forgive me, Lord, but sometimes one must be the rod as well as the shepherd." The battle raged. Shattered glass, wood splintered by bullets, screams, and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Then, when it seemed the saloon's ammunition would run out, the sound of many horses echoed down the main street. Federal Marshal Thompson arrived with 15 men, all armed and with badges gleaming in the emerging moonlight. "Cornelius Ashford," the marshal's voice thundered. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and connection to federal stagecoach robberies." Ashford tried to flee, but Jake leaped from the second-floor window, a move that drew gasps of surprise, landing on the banker and knocking him into the street dust. "This," Jake whispered in Ashford's ear as he restrained him, "is for what you tried to do to my mother." The battle ended as quickly as it began. The thugs, seeing their leader fallen and facing federal law, dropped their weapons. The silence that followed was broken only by tears of relief and embraces among the defenders. Chapter 7, Justice and Redemption. The next morning brought a transformed Dustwater Valley. The makeshift courtroom in the Morrison barn was packed, every seat occupied by citizens who came to witness Cornelius Ashford's fall. Federal Marshal Thompson presided, while Federal Judge Harrow, brought specially from Fort Worth, prepared to hear the evidence. Jake sat beside his mother, who, despite the violent night, remained erect, dressed in her best purple dress. The 15 women of the Silver Moon Saloon formed a protective wall around her, each wearing a silver ribbon in their hair, a symbol of solidarity they had created themselves. "Mr. Ashford," Judge Harrow began, his deep voice echoing in the silent barn, The evidence against you is overwhelming. We have here 2 sets of books, clearly showing systematic fraud. Letters in your own handwriting coordinating robberies of 3 federal stagecoaches. And 23 loan contracts with interest up to 300%, an illegal practice known as usury. Daniel Hayes presented each document methodically, his youth contrasting with the legal precision of his words. When he finished, the silence was absolute. But the most damning evidence, Marshall Thompson stood up, producing a telegram, came this morning from Denver. Jim Rattlesnake Morrison, captured 2 months ago, confessed everything in exchange for clemency. Mr. Ashford, you were the mastermind behind the Red Canyon Gang. Gasps of surprise ran through the crowd. The Red Canyon Gang had terrorized the region for 5 years, robbing not just stagecoaches, but also small farmers and merchants. Ashford, chained between 2 federal deputies, kept his gaze fixed on Margaret with pure hatred. That whore ruined me, all because of a decrepit saloon and a bunch of useless widows. The sound of Margaret's slap on Ashford echoed like a shot. Even sick, she had enough strength to make his head spin. Those useless widows, she said calmly, are women who lost everything and chose to rebuild with dignity, something you, with all your money, will never understand. Judge Harrow banged his gavel. Cornelius Ashford, I sentence you to 25 years of hard labor at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. All your assets will be confiscated and used to compensate your victims. As Ashford was dragged out, screaming empty threats, Jake approached Marshall Thompson. How did you know? How did you arrive at the exact time? Thompson smiled, pointing to Father Francisco. The good father sent me a telegram 3 days ago. Said a holy war was about to begin in Dustwater Valley. I came prepared. But the greatest revelation was yet to come. The town lawyer, Augustus Webb, approached Jake with a worn leather folder. Mr. Harland, upon examining Ashford's confiscated assets, we found this. He handed over the folder. These are the original deeds to half the properties in Dustwater Valley, including the Silver Moon Saloon land, all obtained illegally. By law, they returned to the original owners. Jake opened the folder, his eyes widening. Mother, according to this, you didn't owe $3,000. Ashford owed you. He forged the loan documents based on a debt from your father that had already been paid 20 years ago. Margaret took the papers with trembling hands. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks as she understood. Not only was the saloon saved, but she was creditor to a small fortune in reparations. But there's more, Jake continued, pulling a yellowed envelope from his own pocket. I kept this for years, waiting for the right moment. It was a reward certificate. Blackjack Thornton, the outlaw I captured 3 years ago. The reward was $10,000. I never collected because, well, I was saving it for a real emergency. Jake, don't, Margaret began. It's already done, he interrupted gently. I transferred it to your name yesterday, before the battle. It didn't matter if we won or lost. You would have financial security. The barn exploded in applause. Mary hugged Margaret, crying. Bill slapped Jake's back with enough force to knock down a horse. Mackenzie, the tough old gunslinger, discreetly wiped away a tear. You know, Margaret said when the noise diminished, her voice loaded with emotion, I spent my whole life thinking wealth was what we leave for our children. But now I see. She looked around at each friendly face. True wealth is the love we plant. And today, we reaped the greatest fortune of all. Epilogue. 6 months later. 6 months later, the Silver Moon Saloon gleamed under the noon sun like a jewel in the heart of Dustwater Valley. The new windows reflected the light, the newly polished wood shone, and the sound of laughter and music floated through the open doors. But the greatest transformation wasn't in the building, it was in its owner. Margaret Harlan descended the stairs with firm steps, her face recovering the colors that disease had stolen. The specialist doctor from San Francisco, paid with part of Jake's bounty, had achieved the impossible, not a complete cure, but a recovery that many called miraculous. Mother, you should rest, Jake said from the bar where he served drinks to a full house. Rest? Margaret laughed, a crystalline sound that hadn't been heard in months. Son, I rested too much while I was sick. Now it's time to live. The saloon had transformed into the cultural center of Dustwater Valley. On Tuesdays, Margaret gave music lessons to the town's children. On Thursdays, Mary led a sewing group that produced clothes for the needy. On Saturdays, Mackenzie, now a minority partner in the establishment, taught self-defense to the region's women. "Jake!" Daniel Hayes entered, now sporting the star of Chief Sheriff. "Letter for you from Austin." Jake opened the envelope, his eyes quickly scanning the contents. "It's an offer. The Texas Rangers want to recruit me. Fixed salary, state authority." The saloon fell silent. Everyone knew it was a unique opportunity for a bounty hunter to become a respected lawman. Margaret approached, gently touching her son's face. "What does your heart say?" Jake looked around. Bill was teaching his youngest son to play harmonica. Elizabeth was sewing a wedding dress. She would marry young Farmer Morrison next month. Sarah, now a confident woman, managed the saloon's finances with surprising expertise. The other women, each having found their place, their dignity, their family. "My heart," Jake said slowly, "says I've already found my place." He tore up the letter. "Dustwater Valley needs a deputy, someone to keep the peace we've won. If Daniel agrees, I'd like to be his right hand." "It would be an honor." Daniel extended his hand, which Jake shook firmly. Margaret climbed onto the small stage where the piano now gleamed, restored. "Friends, family, because that's what you all are. There's something I need to say." The crowd quieted, all eyes on her. "Months ago, when I was at my lowest point, I told my son I had nothing to give him." She paused, looking at Jake with infinite love. "What a fool I was. I gave him the only thing that matters. Roots, a place to return to, a community to protect. And he, in return, gave me something even more precious. He showed me that a son's love isn't measured in dollars or property, but in presence, in shared struggle, in victories celebrated together." Jake climbed onto the stage, hugging his mother. "You taught me that family isn't just blood, Mother. It's choice. And every person in this saloon chose to fight for us. So, I have a proposal." He turned to the crowd. "The Silver Moon Saloon will become a cooperative. Each employee will have a share. Profits will be divided. Because this place isn't just Margaret Harlan's. It belongs to everyone who defended it." The tumult of joy that followed could be heard throughout the valley. Mary cried, hugging her colleagues. Bill lifted Jake on his shoulders as if he were a child. Even Mackenzie, the old tough guy, couldn't hide his smile. That night, as the sun set painting the sky with fire colors, mother and son sat on the saloon's porch, watching the town they had helped save. "You know," Margaret said softly, "I spent my whole life accumulating things to leave for you. Money, property, a respectable name. But in the end, Jake completed, holding his mother's fragile but strong hand. You gave me something better. You taught me that true treasure isn't what we keep, but what we share. It's not what we accumulate, but what we build together." A shooting star crossed the sky, and Margaret made a silent wish, not for wealth or health, but for more moments like this, surrounded by love, purpose, and the certainty that she had raised not just a son, but a man who understood the true value of life. The Silver Moon Saloon would continue for generations, not just as an establishment, but as a symbol. A reminder that when a mother said, "I have nothing to give you," she had given everything, and her son had proven that love truly was the greatest treasure of all. The end. And you, what did you think of this journey? Have you ever had someone in your life who said they had nothing to give but gave everything? Share your story of love and overcoming in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, leave your like and share so more people can know the power of true love in the Old West. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Old West stories.